Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Richard Corn. I'm an adult family home provider.
Yes.
You can date me if you want. You know, I think that a lot of what Rock was saying at the end was he was talking about guardians can appeal. At the end of your session there, you were talking more in the terms of guardians, correct? That can do the appealing, and that's kind of. And I have an adult family home with, 3 people with developmental disabilities where the guardians will appeal and would like to appeal that they've talked to me. And I guess my biggest question was the long-term care functional screen. I went into a meeting with Nancy Schultz and John Weber for like 2.5 hours, and we talked about the long-term care functional screen, and it really has nothing to do because they're calculating that in with a formula that nobody can understand, and they're mixing that in with the long-term screen to calculate a rate out.
Yep.
Based on percentages and points.
Yep.
And they're unable to, and they're not sending us. They won't go through any of them numbers with us, and that's the biggest problem that I have. Is okay, show me how you're working that and how that's working. And we don't have that. We can't do that. Is what we're being told, and that's kind of the problem.
If you have problems accessing information about the long-term care functional screen, I'd say one of the things you can do is really work with the guardians. The guardians have every right to request that information. They can share it with you.
See, but I got the long-term care.
Okay, well the problem is they're not explaining to you how that rate is set, and in fact, when they're changing point values, which influences the way you get paid, then it's kind of like being in Argentina, where they change how much the currency's worth every so often.
So how would we go about that and getting them to show us them numbers, or how can you?
Well, I think that perhaps your state representative might be able to be of assistance, but we told people at the last session that there is a role for the state legislators to help make sure that the system is being transparent, and if you have a state legislator asking on your behalf, sometimes those things can get done in ways that might be surprising. People are pretty responsive. So, there's some accountability ultimately to the state legislature for the way the program's being run. That's why there was an audit of the program, and so that fixes would be made to it. So, it's no easy fix. They have, obviously, there's some financial problems that they're dealing with, and some of that, I think Rock pointed out, is in the pipeline that comes from the state to the MCO, and the assumption that all MCOs ought to be benchmarked against each other, so that a pilot county, like Milwaukee County or Fond du Lac or Portage County or one of the original pilot sites, they had access to some funding that the current MCOs don't. But what they want to do is they want to say, we want to achieve the same results the pilot counties did without respect to the fact that expansion occurred, or there might be geographic or demographic differences. So for example, out here, geographically, you're very close to the Twin Cities. That's a huge driver in terms of salaries that people need to get paid. Secondly, you in this area took a lot of people out of Northern Wisconsin Center. When people came out of Northern Wisconsin Center, they were promised enough money to make sure that that person could have a quality program. So, some of the rates were as much as $300 to $400 a day. I had a member of my association, a place called Chippewa County Healthcare Center, said that when managed care came into being in the county that they had a group home in which they had taken somebody out of Northern Wisconsin Center, were getting, I think they might have been getting the high 200s a day for the people that they had in the group home. Well, when the Family Care organization came in, I forget which one it was, it might have been CHP, it might have been another one, they were told that the rate was being cut from the amount that was sufficient to provide a quality service to $75 a day. Well, for a person coming out of Northern Wisconsin Center who had serious behavioral issues, that wasn't enough money. And so you've got two problems. You've got the functional screen not measuring things like that because it was never designed to measure things like that. A more valid assessment might be something like the supports intensity scale, which is used in more than half the states in the country to actually assess and determine, in many cases, the resources that are allocated. So you've got that going on. And plus you've got this idea that, we're going to try to reduce the cost of services without regard to the impact on quality. So what Chippewa County Healthcare Center did was they switched to IRIS. When they switched to IRIS, they got consideration for an exceptional needs rate. And so they were able to maintain those people in that group home instead of returning them to an institutional setting where they might cost 4 times as much.
Yeah, and let me piggyback on that. We went down a path last year where we thought the functional screen might be the answer to a lot of problems. And there were problems with functional screens. And the problem with functional screens is usually that care managers come and visit the person. They might visit them at the day program and ask, do you brush your own teeth? And the box gets marked independent in oral hygiene. And if they'd been at your house and asked you, you would have said, well, of course not. You know, here's all the queuing we need to do, or hand over hand or whatever. And so there were some functional screens that are just wrong, and that's why guardians ought to get one periodically and look at it and go, oh yeah, I don't think so. Or, you know, if they agree, great. So last year, I know a bunch of people who had their functional screens redone in the face of this, you know, CHP has decided this person should be 25% less. So the functional screen was redone, and yeah, there were a couple of questions changed, or even if there weren't, then we'd say, you know, so let's say several of the entries got changed. CHP said, yeah, okay, well, we'll adjust it $1. We still want this big cut. Well, what is the big cut based on if it's not based on the functional screen? And the answer is it's only sort of kind of based on the functional screen. The rest of it is, I think they're starting out with a goal in terms of saving money and then parceling it out throughout the system. Because it was not logically related to functional screens. There isn't any way you can really look at it and say, oh, you've described somebody who should be $180 a day. So that's that. And then the other thing I wanted to follow up on, this mentioning the state centers, and that is, I've been doing this for 30 years and was in on some of the early discharges from state centers. Milwaukee County used to just be, it had so many private facilities for people with developmental disabilities. Some of them were horrible. I had played a part in closing some of them down. These were the proudest days of my life. And we had to find places for folks. You know, we had done the easy ones, now it's the harder ones, now it's the next harder ones. And what did Milwaukee County, what did the state do, what did every county do? And went out to the provider community and said to the provider community, hey, wouldn't it be great if you had specially trained staff who could handle problem behaviors? And for the medically needy people, can't you bigger providers actually put some nurses on staff, and can't you do all this other stuff? And so the provider community responded and got itself up to speed handling people that 30 years ago we wouldn't even have imagined getting out of institutions. And so now this is running headlong into a brick wall, and it's in the name of cost, the managed care organizations are saying, yeah, we know we told you to do, other people told you to do that, the state told you to do that, but we just don't think we should have to pay as much. Not really justifying how it is they think you can serve people with these high needs without that specially trained staff. And then the thing I like to bring up here is, so there's a nurse employed by the managed care organization, and that costs a lot, because nurses cost a lot. And that person may come out and be part of a little planning, take a blood pressure now and again, but if that group home provider fires their nurse, I tell you, the CHP nurse isn't going to come in at 2 in the morning when there's somebody with a fever at one of the group homes. And so it's just bad policy to say we can do without this stuff that we thought it was so important. We begged the provider community to develop this stuff. How did it become unimportant in just a couple of years?